And welcome to another episode of Inside CKP. I'm your host, Jeremy Como. Uh, and with us, we have a newcomer to CKP, Mr. Fred Hughes. Welcome. Uh,
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
you're very welcome. And before we get started, let's pay the bills. This show is brought to you by Chris Kennedy Publishing. You can go to chriskennedypublishing.com for all your sci-fi, military sci-fi, fantasy, post-apocalyptic, nonfiction. I mean, everything. They even have a little bit of romance in there, very little, but it's great. They have huge worlds that you can get lost in. You can go there and sign up for the newsletter. You can sign up for their Patreon. You get free stuff. If you sign up for the newsletter, you can become a pre-reader. I think that's where they pick their pre-readers from. And of course, in addition to the website, you can find all of their offerings on Amazon as well. You can buy cool T-shirts like this, and they have the international T-shirts because CKP is going international. And with that, Fred, where can people find you?
Well, I have a couple of websites right now. The easiest places to find me is on is www. My publish is fredhughespublishing.com, which is my website. Blog on there, newsletter on there, or you can sign up for my newsletter. Also, facebook.com, FOH Books, and facebook.com CTBBall43. That's my personal page, but there's always a bunch of stuff on there about what I'm doing as well.
Awesome. All right. So this is the first time you and I meet. So thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And so what can people? So you're a science fiction author. What can people expect from a story that you would write? What do you try to do to people?
Well, when I started writing, I thought I was writing military science fiction. And after I got to about halfway through book two, almost into book three, I realized that, well, maybe, it's obviously a lot of um, military and fighting in space and on planet surfaces, but it might be more space opera, which
Mhm.
is, I never intended it to be, but
Mhm.
I wrote a lot of intrigue into book one, and that's carried over through the entire series. So I guess it's almost more space opera-ish.
Okay.
But the one thing I always try to stress, because I'm is that whatever I put in is realistic,
Mhm.
whether it's the Marines fighting on the surface or fleets fighting in space. It's all realistic and it makes sense. There
Awesome.
aren't any magic wands being waved to, make things happen.
All right. Well, so let's say the name of what we're talking about. What is your book series called?
Well, the series is called Prince of Britannia,
Mhm.
and the first book in that series was called, or is called, The Prince Awakens.
Mhm.
And I guess before I want to give a little, elevator pitch about uh, the actual Empire of Britannia to begin with.
Mhm.
Before I talk about, because it's central to all the books, because it is the, Prince of Britannia series.
Mhm.
Um, Basically, the people who colonize um, this section of space fled Earth in the late 22nd century, just as the Fourth World War started.
Mhm.
There were originally 12 arc ships, each carrying 100,000 colonists in cryosleep. One of the Ark ships is destroyed in battle before they can get out of the Earth system, along with 5 of their 6 escorts, military escorts. And they basically jump into recently discovered hyperspace, which no one really understands yet, and no one knows how to navigate yet. But, when everything's going to hell, you do what you have to do. So they flee, basically, they stay in hyperspace for almost 100 years. And when they come out, they find they're 1,000 light years away from Earth. And they're way out near the Orion Nebula. And that's where they start over. They form initially 8 colonies because most of the people who were in this fleet were from Commonwealth countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, Scotland, Ireland. So you have all these different nationalities. And there were some other groups that tossed their hat in also. And so they start with 8 colonies. And by the time, fast forward 1,000 years from that happening, from there starting the colonies is where book 1 starts. And now there are 93 star systems in the Empire.
Oh, wow. So what brought you to CKP? Because well, I'll let you tell the story. What brought you to CKP? Because you're the new guy.
Well, I had 3 books out and somehow sold a few. It wasn't because of any genius marketing or anything like that. I ran some Facebook ads. I tried to do Amazon ads, but they were never really successful because I don't think I really understood the whole process of Amazon ads. And I always had the feeling that the books could be doing much better.
Mm-hmm.
If I had smarter people editing, if I had smarter people helping me with marketing and getting exposure to the books, that the books would do even better. So, and Melissa says, I saw those numbers sold more than a few.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to be humble.
Yeah. Well, to Chris's point, I do love your covers. They're pretty.
And I shouldn't say this. Those covers cost $50 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the one that found most of the pictures that the person combined into creating the cover. So, I was always happy with them. Chris asked me if I wanted to change them, and I'm going, you're the expert in these things. I want to try to keep them as close to the original as possible. But you're smarter than I am about things like this. So, and he decided to go with them. So I'll be curious to see what book 4's cover looks like, because that'll be the first one that I publish, completely through, initially through Chris.
Okay, so there's 3 books that exist already.
There's 3 books that exist already. The first book, the Prince Awakens,
Mm-hmm.
is actually scheduled to be released on the 25th of October.
Awesome.
The second book in the series, and Chris has all 3 of these books already. The second book in the series is supposed to be released in late November. And last I heard, the third book is scheduled to be released in early January, as last I heard. And was it a week and a half ago, I sent in book 4, which I just finished.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. So, and asked Chris what I should do, and he said, well, write book 5. And so I said, yes, sir, and I commenced writing book 5. So I don't know a timeline for book 4. I would expect Chris wants to just roll these out one after another. So soon, I hope.
Awesome. So how did you become a part of the family? How did you meet Chris, and how did that go down?
Well, truth be told, I got a rather innocuous email from someone, and I've since lost it, so I don't even have the email address. I didn't recognize it. I didn't recognize the name of the person who signed it, who sent it. After I had released book 2, who sent me basically through my Facebook site, my publishing Facebook site, uh, an email saying about how much he liked my books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And had I ever considered checking out Chris Kennedy Publishing? And it's like, well, I had heard of Chris Kennedy Publishing. I mean, geez, I had started reading Chris's stuff, way back when he first started writing them, so I knew who he was, and I realized that he also, had started his own publishing company, but had never, at the time, I didn't think I was anywhere near good enough to be part of a publishing company. So I didn't do it. So after book 3, it's like, I actually have been friends with Chris on Facebook for a while. And so I just sort of sent him an instant message saying, hey, I'd be interested in signing up with Chris Kennedy Publishing. And I sort of listed the accomplishments I had to date with the books. And he replied pretty quickly saying, and we had a Zoom call. And within a week, I was signed up and a member of the company.
Awesome. Yeah, the grass doesn't grow under Chris, that's for sure. And the cool thing about doing a live show is we can get dates. So we got
Yeah, it was
October.
Prince Awakens.
Yeah, and then the next one, Leader
9
War.
November.
Yeah. January.
Chris, though that's out of order, though, Chris. Looking at those dates, Prince Commander is the second book in the series, and Prince War Leader is the third book in the series.
And then Prince Peacemaker. Which,
cool.
So,
Peacemaker is the fourth book.
Yeah. So the problem with the name Peacemaker is in CKP. There's an ongoing thing because we have the Peacekeepers with Kevin Eikenberry and everything. And if you ever say Peacemaker when you mean to say now I'm getting mixed up. Well, you say the wrong thing and you got to buy a round, So,
okay.
So this is gonna throw people off. So no. I was talking about Fred's book.
I was talking about Fred's books. But book 5's in progress, and that's going to be Prince Renegade. So I'm.
And apparently I owe Kevin a drink now. So okay.
Because he called you on it.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, my wife called me on it, so the support there, All right. Well, so let's learn a little bit more about you. When did you start writing? How did you know when did you know you wanted to be a writer?
I never imagined being a writer. I never imagined myself being a creative person. I was in the Navy for 20 years, and after that, for 20 years, I basically spent working in engineering and maintenance. So I'm in. I used to make the saying that I was an engineer by trade and a historian by passion, and now I sort of have to modify that to say I was an engineer by trade, and now I'm an author by passion because it sort of grew on me. I mean, in the infamous January of 2020, just before everything started to go to hell with COVID,
Mm-hmm.
um, my company consolidated and I was suddenly unemployed. And being in your early 60s and unemployed is not fun. And then on top of that, COVID hit. So since I work in a profession that is hands-on and in a workplace, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those places were not hiring. So
Yeah.
after moping around, I actually went ahead and fully retired. Um, and the wife got tired of me playing video games all day long. So it was like, you've been writing that book in your head for the last 10 years. Why don't you actually sit down and write it? And that's what I did. So spent a year doing that, not really understanding anything. Spent money, to hire an editor who didn't do that good a job, and self-published. And here I am, well, 3 books published, and Chris is going to re-release them with a 4th book and a 5th book. And the damn Marines took over book 4. So um, I what was going to be a 6-book series is now a 7-book series.
Oh, awesome.
um, but I learned my lesson. I actually, Mark accused me of being a pantser, and I am, but I did write an outline for this book, so I'm going to try to follow it so that so I don't keep expanding this series, because people will eventually get tired of reading. I mean, Hazard King, the hero of my series, the Prince of Britannia, is a really great character, but you know, even I got tired of Honor Harrington after a while. So um, I think that people will get tired of Hazard King always doing these miraculous things. So I can't ride that horse for too long.
So, speaking of your characters, can you, without giving too much away, can you talk about your protagonists and your antagonists and stuff like that?
Well, my protagonist is primarily, although I do try to as I have progressed and grown as an author, I have expanded um, my characters. But,
Mm.
my principal character is Hazard King. He starts book 1. In the very beginning of book 1, you find that he's a guy with a secret. He's a young man with a secret. He's an ensign right out of Fleet Academy, assigned to his first ship, and they're about to go into combat. He meets the love of his life on board the ship, and then almost loses her in the battle because she gets seriously wounded. His best friend, who I kill off early, dies saving her, and he ends up saving the ship. And then he has to go back home because he has to deal with a fiance who's like super bad shape and to bury a dead friend. And
Mm.
then his mother calls. Well, mom is the empress. So, and he's basically, that's like a closely held secret. So when mom calls, he answers, and she informs him that his brother is a retard.
All right, so you got me with that one. Go ahead.
I shouldn't say it that way. I don't want to sound callous or disrespectful of people that are learning impaired. His brother has mental issues,
Hmm.
and she can't trust him with being the next emperor, so she's going to name him the crown prince. And so he spends the rest of book 1 putting down a rebellion by his brother and fighting off an evil empire, which for the first for most of book 1 and part of book 2, there's the Marxist Federation, which is a splinter Russian like WASP colony that they stumble upon. Oh, Mia says the eldest is batshit crazy. Yeah, he is. And anyway, so he has to deal with them, and there's at the end of book one, there's a penultimate battle where he has to lead a small force he happens to have at hand against a Marxist rogue fleet that's attacking one of the Federation star systems and trying to hold it hostage. And at the end of that battle, like the very, the epilogue of that, he makes the decision that he'd almost died twice during the battle and has had other close calls, and that if he dies, his brother will become emperor. So he decides, I can't allow that to happen. So I won't say any more, but he does something about that.
Awesome. Awesome. So you said you're a big history buff. All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So I'm assuming a lot of that goes into your writing, and of course your military history and all that stuff goes into that too. I'm assuming. Do you, go ahead.
No, go finish your question. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
Do you, do you see yourself writing? Because alternate history is such a fun thing to do.
Bless you, Jeremy.
I
Uh,
was hoping.
I actually have, Chris, cover your ears. A little side project that I'm working on, and right now, all I am doing is accumulating information at the time. I mean, I don't have, I have a rough plot and a rough outline, but not any more than that. Um, but yeah, writing a rough. I'm planning on doing something in an alternate history. One of those what if this person had done this instead of that in history. And it involves the fall of Singapore during World War II.
Oh, that's awesome. I love alternate history stuff, and uh, uh me Miss Cleve agrees. Side projects are fun. So I'm trying. So what's your? So you told me when it takes place. What's your teaser for it? Are you that far yet that you can
For
tease?
the alternate history,
Yeah.
I can give you the basic premise.
Hmm.
And the basic premise is um, the Singapore garrison before World War II started was commanded by a very competent general. Um, because of regulations at the time, he was forced to retire. And the general who ended up taking over was General Percival, who was the guy who ended up doing so poorly in command and ended up surrendering you know, without much of a fight. Um, in the alternate, the war starts, and this general, and I can't even remember his name right now, but this individual started politicking because all of a sudden they started waiving the age rules. People could stay in longer. So he applied for reinstatement, and the Army actually put him, um, brought him back to active duty, and he actually ended up performing heroically as the Governor General of Malta during the peak, you know, period when it was like being bombed into oblivion, but still holding out. And I have it that, well, what if the general sent him back to Singapore because he was knowledgeable of the situation? He would have, I have no doubt, based on his personality and what he wrote about what should be done, he would handle things much differently.
That's awesome. So getting back to your series that's coming out through CKP,
Okay.
what was what were some of your favorite things? Well, actually, this is a general question. What are some of your favorite things about writing? And it can be, these books. What do you get out of it? What do you enjoy?
Because I'm a pantser,
Mm-hmm.
it's always, what are they going to do next? You know, I write the story, and I told Chris once, I'm not an author, I'm a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I tell the story through through my characters, and sometimes they take over, and they take it in a direction that I had never anticipated, because I try to put myself in their mindset when I'm writing, and it's like, oh, I would have never thought to do it that way. So all of a sudden the story changes. Um, so yeah, that's what I enjoy the most, is what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. That's a common story. Is like many other authors, you listen to the voices in your head every now and then, and they take you to strange places. So that's
Well, there are several of those voices, but
yeah.
we're not going to talk about strip clubs. But
No. Well, we're all adults here. That's fine. So, do you have? Well, I'm assuming it's your main character, but I could be wrong. Do you have a favorite character in your books?
I I have several characters I'm partial to.
Mhm.
Um, One of them is a character you meet early on in book one. He's an old school Marine gunnery sergeant
Mhm.
by the name of Mike Sondheim, and he gets assigned to escort Hazard. Sometimes I have trouble keeping track of which persona Hazard's in. Is he Hazard King or is he Prince Henry?
Mhm.
He gets assigned to escort Prince or Hazard to off the ship he was riding on to Imperial Security headquarters on the main orbital space station.
Mhm.
Um, and there ends up being a gunfight because the bad guys figure out that Hazard's on there and they try to assassinate him. So from then on, like Gunny, as everyone just refers to him, as anybody who's been, in the Corps knows that, he's a Gunny. Um, Basically, is at Hazard's side through the rest of the series so far. Even though he's getting a bit long in the tooth, I just
Mhm.
had him go on a hostage rescue mission without Hazard's knowledge, and on landing he lands and he thinks he's talking to himself, but he's on a hot mic, and he says, "I'm getting too old for this shit," and everybody else in his group starts laughing at him.
Yeah. So, do you ever put some of yourself in your characters or in your books? I mean,
No, I don't think so.
yeah.
The I'm vain, but I'm not vain enough to think that I'm Hazard.
Hmm.
Um, I actually, I might I might have modeled Hazard's father, who is
Hmm.
Duke Henry,
Hmm.
after myself a little bit. A little bit stoic, a little bit reserved, a little bit of a smartass.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'd have to say, okay, Duke Henry, I probably would say I modeled after myself a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
That's a good
So,
question, by the way.
well, one thing I noticed is, always what I'm hearing over and over again is write about what you in the military, you're a history buff, and I was just wondering, if you put yourself, dip your toe in there and put a little bit of yourself in there.
Well, one of the things I discovered as I was writing book one and through all the first three books, not so much book four, because there's a lot of space battles, major space battles in all three of these first, in all three of these first books. And I found, because when I was in the Navy, I rode submarines for a living,
Mhm.
um, both missile submarines and attack submarines.
No.
And I found that the knowledge I gained doing that, the three-dimensional thinking up, because that's what submarines operate in, that type of environment.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, pilots do too, in deference to Chris, but most of the time a pilot's controlling himself, and his plane. Maybe he
Mhm.
has a co-pilot or a Rio or whatever, but it's a smaller unit, whereas the submarine, is 350 feet long and got 120 people on it,
Mhm.
and is making all these maneuvers in a restrictive environment. And I found that helped a lot in me writing space battles.
Mhm. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, just equating it to space travel versus uh, in the ocean. Um, let's see. There was something I wanted to ask you, and I think I lost it. Life. Oh, um, so you're writing full time, or do you
Yeah,
do other?
I don't. I actually, at one point, right after I finished book one and it released it, and it had been out for like 3, 4 months. I actually went back to work because I didn't think writing was going to be a gig that amounted to anything. I After I finished book one and I self published it, so I could say that I'm a published author. Um, the opportunity came to go back to work in a limited role, and I did. And all of a sudden, I have all these people that are bugging me about writing book two. They keep
Mhm.
posting on the site, when is book two going to come out? And I'm going, well, I haven't even started the damn thing. And because I didn't think anybody was going to be reading this. So I found that I just couldn't, I couldn't get any writing done. And I'll admit, I admire the hell out of the people who are managing the right while holding down a job and taking care of a family. I
Mhm.
mean, I couldn't do it. I mean, I couldn't do it, and I wasn't even working that hard.
Yeah.
And I don't have. It's just me and the wife now. All the kids are gone, so I admire the hell out of what they're doing to hone their craft.
Yeah.
But
Well,
no,
so
I write full time.
that's awesome. That's so. And you said now, so you're trying to mix it up now. You were a pantser, and now you're trying to
Well,
work
I
without
decided
water.
that since people keep taking over, different characters keep taking over my books, so I decided I'm going to try to put a little outline together so that I can keep things on track.
Mhm.
Um,
What do you
and
prefer?
I love the pants, I really
Mhm.
do. But there comes a point when a series has got to end, and uh, or maybe I just let it keep going and I let the characters evolve. Let Hazard become emperor and let his son take over his spot. I don't know. Maybe I go that direction.
Yeah. So when you wrote the first book and people were bugging you for the second book, when you wrote the first book, was it the plan to write a series or
In my head, it was 3 books.
okay?
If there was any interest, that it was going to be 3 books.
Hmm.
Um, I was looking at sales numbers and even amounts sold and pages read, and I'm going, nah, there's no interest here. And so and you know especially since I didn't know what I was doing. But then I had some fans who convinced me that I needed to write a second book. And whoever they are, I want to thank them because when I released book 2, and I released book 1 in February of 2021.
Mhm.
I released book 2 like the 29th of December of 2021. So there was quite a gap
Mhm.
between the two. And it started selling like hotcakes. I guess people were waiting to see if I was ever going to write another book. And so book 1 started selling again, and book 2 started selling. And I'm going, well, shit, maybe I ought to write a third one. And so that's, book 3. And so I wrote book 3, and it came out I wrote it in much, much faster time, even though, once again, didn't really know what I was doing. And it came out in mid May. So basically only 5 months for that one.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take a moment to thank Chris and um, Bill for giving me insights on how to improve my productivity.
That's
Um,
awesome.
because my through, I, it's Chris calls it the factory floor for a reason. Um, my throughput, I mean, literally when Chris contacted me, well, when I reached out to him and we reached an agreement, I was at, I had basically 15,000 words written in book 4, and
Mhm.
that was mid-July. And between mid-July and the first week in um, September, so call it 7 weeks, I wrote 80,000 words.
Wow.
So, um, what they did helped me a lot and helped me focus. So,
That's awesome. Well, so uh, we're gonna find out a little bit more about you. Is there anything? What is your current like favorite book, or that you like right now that you would recommend to people? And it could be something that you wrote. That's fine. But
oh no, I would never say that about my books. It
yeah.
would be, God, I mean, the latest, and it just won the Dragon Award. The latest book that David released on the Manticore Ascendant series
Mhm.
is a great, and that whole series is a great series. Um, there's that. Um, that's what that's what I just finished. Um, Glenn Stewart is another favorite of mine. I made a post earlier today because Chris is talking about Chris Nuttall,
Mhm.
and my lord, I got to have, I think, what's the count? He has 40 or 50 books, and I think I have at least 40 of them
Mhm.
between paperbacks and digital. And I've, you know, read his stuff, and loved his Marine series, Empire Rising series, or
Mhm.
yeah. Um, anyway, so I run the gamut. I mean, I'm reading a history of Stalingrad right now. So,
Awesome.
um, but that's sort of a leadership thing.
Mhm. So, outside of writing and reading, what are you into? Because you can't write all the time. You gotta be inspired and doing things that does that. What are you into outside of writing?
Well, there's if if you ask my wife that, it would be computer games because I probably play them a little too much. Um, I'm going to blame Maya because now I look forward to doing Wordle every day.
Oh yeah,
Um,
she's big on Wordle.
I golf a little bit,
Mhm. Any good?
and no,
No.
I was good when I was younger and played, and I was a scratch golfer when I was younger, but
Mhm.
I was playing every day.
Yeah.
Um, but was playing every day because I was single and living on a military base and didn't have anything else to do. And playing golf was actually pretty cheap.
Yeah.
The That's probably it. I mean, I don't lead a very exciting life.
Well, so what's next for you? What are you excited about? Stuff that, projects that you're going to be working on, or new things?
Well, I'm excited about. I really am, and I told the wife this earlier that I've never been as excited to be working on a book as I am the one I'm writing right now.
It's awesome.
Book 5 of the Prince of Britannia series. It's probably the reason why I've cranked out as many words in it so far. The wife and I are actually taking a vacation to Hawaii the first week in October.
Uh-oh.
So I'll be out of pocket for that. And that'll be
Congratulations.
exciting because that's like one of the last states I've not been to.
It's beautiful.
I never had any desire to go there. So,
Oh, really?
But she does. So, I mean, I've been, why pay all that money and spend all that time in the air to get to Hawaii? I mean, I can go down to Cozumel or Jamaica or Grand Bahama and have just as good a time for less money. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm a cheap bastard.
I appreciate your honesty. Yeah. But have you been to many conventions, or you're gonna be at conventions or anything like that?
Well, once again, thank you, Jeremy, for asking a question like that. Back in 2018, I went to my first Dragon Con as a fanboy and just fan geek the crap out of it. Meeting all the guys that I read their books, Weber and, God bless him, Eric, and even Chris, although I'm sure he doesn't remember it. And a host of others. I went back this year, had already made plans well before I joined CKP to go back this year. My daughter is like crazy nuts about it. She goes, I think this year was her 12th.
Oh, yeah.
So she goes all the time, and she eventually convinced me to go to what I called GeekCon.
It's Nerd New Year.
Nerd New Year. That's excellent, Jeremy. So because of all the different communication modes that Chris has enabled us with, the chat room and the Saturday night Zoom calls, I found out that, Bill informed me that he was going to be at FenCon recently. When you're old, you lose track of time easy. So I decided, you know what? I haven't met Bill yet. I want to go over there and meet him. So I went over there and met Bill. Ended up also getting to meet Kayla and Rob. And I'm sure I'm forgetting other people. And had a great time. And more importantly, I got to see the master, Bill, selling books. And that's a sight you need to see.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the way he, runs out into the aisle and strong arms him over to the table so he can start forcing him to buy a book. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
But it was very enlightening to see the different things that you need to do as an author to support your product. And not just support your own product, but to support your whole line. But not just not just CKP stuff, but pointing people to other authors in this in the CKP stable.
Yeah. Well, so are you going to be going to any? Do you have plans to go into future conventions or?
I decided it was important enough, and the tickets were in so limited that I snagged tickets for LibertyCon, so I will be going to that.
Great convention.
My intention is that I will be going to DragonCon next year. I will not be going to FactoryCon. I just can't swing it this year.
Hmm.
I won't be going to 20 books this year, mainly because I really, by the time 20 books happens, I literally have one book out,
Yeah.
re-release. So it doesn't make any monetarily, it doesn't make sense for me to go. Next year, Vegas is definitely going to be on the agenda. Um, Next year, FenCon is going to be on the agenda for me, although I haven't officially signed up for it yet. But that's, and then I'll be going. I'll be going to Superstars in February,
Awesome.
trying to hone my skills,
I hear
both
that's
as
a
an
great convention.
both as an author and as a salesman.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Fred, it's been great talking to you. Before we head out, is there anything else that you want to promote or for yourself or anybody else or anything?
Um, Enjoy the books, and um, I've I've heard other people say this, and most of the people on right now are authors, so I shouldn't have to give them this advice, shouldn't have to say this, but if you have a story, tell it.
Hmm.
Get it down on paper and put it out there, because it's never going to get into print unless you do that.
It's great advice. And so people don't forget, go to Fred's website and his Facebook and his publishing Facebook. Now, Fred, what if people want to get to know you and all that stuff? Where's the best place to find you? Like, where do you communicate the most?
I'd say that I communicate the most on my personal Facebook page.
Okay.
That one. I typically have it open most all the time. So you see me active on, Messenger. You can always shoot me a message, ask me a question, um, whatever. I mean, I'm there.
I'm here to tell you, people, he's very responsive. All right.
Well,
Well,
I also don't work, so,
yes.
so I'm usually looking for something to do.
Yeah. And so before we go, I'm gonna do my usual promotions. Check out some of the affiliated YouTube pages that we have. The Dudes in Hyperspace. You can find them on YouTube. You can also find them on Spotify, Apple, basically anywhere you catch podcasts. I think they have a fresh one coming out this week. I could be wrong, but check them out. Casey Ezel, who's another writer for CKP, has her YouTube channel, which is Writer Life, and where she kind of goes over her experience as an author. Um, and let's see, we're going to go over latest releases. Last week we had the Valkyrie Initiative come out, edited by Marisa Wolf. Tons of
And
great
that's an,
stories.
and that's
Go
an
ahead.
awesome book.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good one. Go check that out. It is the beginning of much, much more. So go ahead and check that out. From the latest releases from Chris Kennedy Publishing, the Chimera Coup from Christopher G. Nuttall, the Pain Bearer from Kendra Merritt, The Futility of Intent by Mike Wyatt Jr., some new audio releases, Uncivil War by P.A. Pyatt, Seasons of the Wolf by John E. Sears. I might be saying that name wrong. Action by Nick Steverson, Wildcats by William Joseph Roberts, and let's see what do we have coming up. so upcoming releases are coming soon. World Enders at the end on Friday is coming out. It's a 4HU novel written by Chris Kennedy and Marisa Wolf. The Vendetta Protocol by Kevin Eikenberry. Heart, Wings, and Fire by Trisha Wooldridge, and she will be taking off next week, so we're not going to have an episode next week, but Trisha will be on the show on October 3rd. That's going to be a Monday. It's not a usual date for us, so look out for those ads. We'll be doing a show with her on Monday the 3rd. Running from the Gods from D.T. Reed. A Murder of Wolves, Eldritch Legacy novel by Jamie Ibsen. Gates of Hell by William S. Frisby Jr. The Sage by Kayla Krantz. The Last Stand by Chris Kennedy and Kevin Eikenberry. And, of course, The Prince Awakens by our good friend Fred Hughes on October 25th. And The Impossible Moon by Mike Jack Stombos. So that's all the things that are coming out in the near future. And so keep an eye out on those. Also, don't forget on the CKP YouTube channel, we have the Future Books podcast that comes out once a month. That is hosted by Randall Willis. The last one featured the Valkyries Initiative that came out last week. And that is produced by Shark Flight Media by our good buddy Ian Malone. So, and I think that is all my promos. So, Fred, I really appreciate you coming on. It was great meeting you, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person sometime soon. I know we're not at FactoryCon, you're not going this year, but maybe I'll see you at one of the other conventions. And of course, you're always welcome to come back on the show. And a big thanks to the fans that are watching this now and in the future. I really appreciate it. And if you're a fan and you're a fan of CKP or you're a fan of science fiction or fantasy in general, tie on to this publishing company because they have a bunch of great stories already, and they're coming out with more every day. Well, it seems like every day. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com for all your book needs. Support this show and Chris Kennedy Publishing by going to their Patreon. Lots of goodies there for members, and of course you can catch all their books on Amazon. And first of all, sign up for the newsletter because if you're looking on Facebook on the factory floor, which don't forget to go there either. You might miss something. You might not get all the notifications, but if you sign up for the newsletters of your favorite authors, you're never going to miss a thing. Plus, you get free stuff. You get free books from these authors and other promotions that they put on there. So support your authors in that way. And I think that's all I have, Fred. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for bearing with me.
Oh no, you're like you said. It's why I do the show, so I don't have to talk that much. I let the storytellers do all the talking, and that's what I like about it. So with that, I say thank you to all the fans, and we'll see you on October 4th. No, I lied. October 3rd. All of y'all have a great evening, and we'll catch you next time.